So for number 2 here, this example is going to take a little bit, so you have to be patient with me here, but you're going to have to do a lot of steps. In this problem here, it says, in a research experiment, a population of fruit flies is increasing according to the law of exponential growth. Must be one of Newton's laws. After 2 days, there are 125 flies, and after 4 days, there are 350 flies. So how many flies will there be after 6 days? That's a great question. Anybody ever have a fly issue? You just want to know how many is going to be there after 6 days? Well, when you get older, it may happen. So here's what you have. You actually have 2 ordered pairs. After 2 days, you have 125 flies. And after 4 days, there are 350. We want to figure out, after 6 days, how many are there? So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to do a couple things here. We're going to have to actually you're going to have to write a couple equations. And if we use our log model, these are exponential growth. So your log model is y equals a times e to the power of bx. So if you notice, here you have an x, here you have a y, here you have an x, here you have a y. What you're going to have is you're going to actually have 2 equations. So one of our equations is going to end up being 125 for our y equals our a, which we don't know, base e to the power of b times 2. And then your second equation over here is going to be 350 is equal to a base e b times 4. So what you notice, if you have 2 equations, you actually have 2 unknowns. We have an a and a b that we have to figure out. So the easiest way to figure out which one of the, or what your a and your b are, is we're going to need this equation that represents the first 2 equations to help us predict how many flies it would be after 6 days. So we're going to have to do a lot of work here of solving one of these equations here for a or for b and substituting into the other equation. So let's take our first equation and let's solve this for a right here. So if we solve this for a, we're going to have to get rid of everything else. So that means that we're going to take each side and we're going to divide it by e to the 2b, e to the 2b. And that's just going to give us a equals 125 all over e to the 2b. Now this is going to have to be substituted into our other equation. We can substitute this in for a right here. So when we do that, that gives us 350. And remember, we take out the a, and we're going to plug in a 125 over e to the 2b, and that's going to be times e to the power of 4b. So when you simplify this, well, you have common bases here. This is really, if you want to put your e underneath here, if you have a common base, can't you subtract the 4b minus the 2b? And that's going to give us a 350 equals 125 e to the 2b. And what we've done is we have eliminated our a's, so that will help us figure out what our b is here. So we just have to solve this equation for b, then we're going to have to plug it back in to find out what our a is. That will give us an equation that we can use to predict how many flies there will be after 6 days. These flies reproduce like rabbits, so we'd probably bring it on top of this thing. Let's go ahead and divide by 125, divide by 125, and when you divide both sides by a 125, that will give you a decimal. Actually, it's not a bad decimal, it's just a 2.8. So if we get a 2.8 is equal to e to the 2b, solve this, and what we're going to do is we're going to natural log our 2.8, and we're also going to natural log our e to the 2b, because that will just get rid of our base e over here. So natural log of 2.8 equals 2b, divide by 2, b equals, and we're going to have to round this, and I'm going to round to 4 decimals. This ends up being a 0.5148. Now what we can do after this is we can plug this value for B, we can plug that back into our equation over here for B, and then we can find out what A is. So that's going to give us, I'll do this in a different color here maybe, A is equal to 125 all over E to the power of 2 times 0.5148. And remember, you can do this all on your calculator. You don't have to get all crazy here, but let's take 125. And we're going to divide this by base E. Then we'll put parentheses here of a 2 times 0.5148. This is going to give us our A value. 44.6437. So A is equal to 44.6437. Now we finally can write our equation because we have our A, our B, we have our A. So, sorry about all the arrows, but I didn't want to get lost. So we're going to say y equals A, which is 44.6437. Promise this will be the longest example you get here. Times B, which is a 0.5148x. This is your equation that you want to use when you are trying to estimate here in the future. Okay? It's kind of important. So, we just need to plug in a 6 for our x. So we're going to say y equals 44.6437 e to the 0.5148. Try not to be disgusted, but I think there's going to be a lot of flies here. Times 6, you plug that into your calculator, and you end up getting 980 flies. Alright, everybody do it with me. 1, 2, 3. Gross. Flies are so gross. You know, every time they land, it's not true, they're not really defecating on your food, but I don't know, it's still gross. So make sure you get those flies before they start pooping all over your food.